Hi guys, it's Marina and I'm back with another video. And today I want to talk about something that's really important in the post-election environment. And I think that this will be one of the most important videos that I will ever make. I believe what I'm about to say is 100% true, and I believe that over time people will begin to see and realize and understand that it is 100% true. And that truth is that everyone is conservative. Now, I leave out a small group of people who are, well, yeah, they're conservative too, but they want to, well, let me go back to the beginning. What do people like Tim Pool, Joe Rogan, Dave Rubin, the tens of thousands of people who've made walkaway videos, and I recommend that anyone check out walkaway videos. If you're on the left and you do not understand what just happened, listen, you have two options. You can put your head in the sand and you can refuse to understand what happened. You can be miserable, you can be afraid, or you can get your head out of the sand and move forward and try to see if you can figure out what happened so that it doesn't happen again. You could argue that that's what happened to a lot of people in 2020, even though I completely disagreed with the way that that was handled. Conservatives in 2020 and in 2022, they said, we'll just do it more harder. We believe in what we're doing and we're going to do it more harder. Okay. So what those people who went from left to right, a lot of people think it's about money. It's not about money. Integrity and authenticity is very lucrative. If you put the work in, you put the same amount of work in. I'm going to explain why it seems like sometimes otherwise. But what these people have in common is that they realized something about being on the left and going to the right. Conservative policies are the only way that you will be able to realize the social justice that you're seeking on the left. That's why people keep switching. And a lot of times there are people on the left who are seeking something that you can't have, because they're, you know, when I talk to people who identify as being socialist or having socialism, I ask them first off, what do you mean by that? And they'll say, well, I mean that, you know, the people control the means of production. And I'm like, the means of producing what? And a lot of times people will get stuck. But oftentimes what I'll do is I will make it more personal. Okay, what if you're an Uber driver? Who should control the means of the production of that service that you have or that you're providing? Who does control the means of that production? Okay. What if you have a restaurant? Who controls the means of production for the service that you provide at that restaurant? No one can open a restaurant and run it by themselves. So they're either going to have to hire someone or they're going to have to partner with someone. And I happen to know people who've done it both ways. And some have been successful both ways and some who failed both ways. But if you are getting ready to start a restaurant and the startup cost is, you know, $700,000, and you put up your $700,000 and you hire several employees to help you run it, if you somehow, for whatever reason, cannot make that business a success, maybe you got the wrong location, maybe you underestimated or something changed about the input cost that you were going to have ongoing. That's happening to a lot of people right now. Well, the employees, they can just leave and go find another job. But the person who put that money invested and their startup costs, they may lose some or all of their money. Well, everybody doesn't want that. And what if you have people that are partnering in a business and they can't agree? Like who, if you have a restaurant and you have 30 employees and they're all partial owners, well, who makes decisions? What if you feel like, I actually have a friend that once owned a restaurant, and one of the partners in the restaurant, he was actually an experienced restaurant manager. Now, the restaurant had been having some struggles, and so he did an assessment and he decided that the restaurant should no longer be open for 24 hours. They wanted to try to get a liquor license, which they didn't have at the time. And he's like, why don't we just wait? And that could, in Southern California where I live, that can actually take a long time, is my understanding. It can take anywhere from a few months to a couple of years. He said, let's start closing at, I think it's like we're going to start closing at midnight until we get the liquor license. And then once we get the liquor license, then we can be open until maybe 4 a.m. and, close until breakfast time. The other partner, who didn't have restaurant experience, refused to go along with it. And eventually the restaurant did fail because they were spending too much money to stay open overnight. And had they just shut down during that time period when the volume was low, but you still had to have a minimum level of staffing, maybe they would have been able to survive. So all the employees, they move on to the next restaurant. There's actually still a restaurant in that location. It's just a different restaurant now. And there's a couple of other restaurants nearby. People can go, they can get other jobs. They haven't lost any money. Losing a job is not the same thing as losing your investment in a business, and everyone doesn't want that. So the argument in itself, even if it means well, it falls apart. I've been managers of people at companies where I worked, and one of the things I learned really quickly as a manager, because when I was working in the corporate world, I would work very hard, long hours. I was trying to move up in that environment, but everybody wasn't. I had a job once when I was in San Diego, and I had a person that worked on my team, and she was very much like me. She was very, very hardworking. She would work long hours. She was very critical of herself. She was always trying to get things right, and she was trying to move up. And by the way, she did. And it was very interesting because she would make a lot of the same type of mistakes that I would make. And they weren't terrible mistakes or anything like that, but we had the same strengths and weaknesses. I had another woman that also worked for me, same team, and they did very similar jobs. They just had different territories that they handled. She was there at work at 7:45 every single day, and she left at 4 every single day. She was the most reliable person. She never made mistakes. But if I needed something done, and it was almost 4 o'clock or after 4 o'clock, she was not going to be the one to do it. She went running every day after she got off work. And she was not the person to stay late. And instead of me upsetting her comfort zone, because she wasn't trying to move up, by the way, I would assign to her things that I knew would fall into what her skill set was and what her desires were. And she was in great shape, by the way, even though she was very young. This is one of the most fit people I've ever known, her and Allison Lamb. But if I had been forcing her to stay late and, telling her that she wasn't dedicated to the job, she would have eventually been demoralized and left. She would have felt like I didn't respect what was important to her. But I was in the office very late, but I was rarely in very early. So I would have her handle things that were unique to someone who was going to be in the office very early. I would handle the things that were for people who were going to be in the office late, as did Sherry. And I had other people who had other skills. And that's the way I ran the team. And it functioned very, very well that way. So everybody doesn't want everything. So the reason that people switch, and it doesn't really matter what your ultimate goal is. For some people, that social justice that they're looking for is they feel like they want racial equality. Conservative policies are how you get that, by giving everybody equal opportunity, because the reason why you see a lot of people who are very liberal or on the left are white and affluent, or from an affluent background. They assume that everyone wants exactly the life that they have. But everybody doesn't want exactly the life that you have. And part of it is kind of sinister, because they think that everybody wants the life that they have, but they don't believe that everyone can have the life that they have. They don't believe that every person can evaluate what kind of life they want and then go pursue that if they're given the equal opportunity. So they're actually also defending their turf. That's why you'll find that there's a lot of people who are very liberal and they live in a gated community and they send their kids to a private school, but they want open borders and schools with, overcrowded schools with various languages that are being taught and things like that for other people. And they can't resolve that. So for those people who have an open enough mind and they're willing to listen, one of the most profound videos that I ever saw was Dave Rubin talking to Larry Elder, and Larry Elder trying to get him to explain where there was systemic racism. And I know most of the people that I know, most of the people that I've talked to, when they get to that very, very uncomfortable moment, their brain glitches out and they collapse and they cannot continue talking about this issue, because it's just too much of an overload on their brain. It should be obvious by now to most people that liberal policies don't work. And while there are many, many people who would like to double down and just do liberal policies more harder, put more money towards it, at some point you got to realize that California has done that already and it doesn't work. And you can't, for years and years and years, it seems like it's finally starting to turn around. And probably if we clean up our elections, it would turn around a lot faster. Even I would vote for all of these initiatives, all of these bond measures, all of these tax increases to help someone else. It wasn't help that I needed. It wasn't help that I needed. I didn't feel like I needed it, but I thought other people needed it. What I didn't know was that it was never going to help them. So the reason people switch, and the most recent one that's on her way out, is Anna Kasparian at the Young Turks. And she will become a conservative if she hasn't already and just is not saying it yet. And the reason why is because she's looking around and she's realizing that all of these liberal policies that she thought was compassionate, that she thought would give people the life that she thought they wanted to have, which oftentimes isn't, that not only is it not compassionate, it doesn't help anyone. And ultimately, it ends up hurting the very people who supported it, which is what happened to her. I feel bad that that happened to her. I live in Los Angeles. I don't have a dog, but I do take walks. And I would hate to have something like that happen to me. It doesn't help anyone. And if you open your mind and you're thinking and you're not just busy, desperate to protect your own, then you start to realize that if we're ever going to get to the social justice that I want, conservative policies are the only way that gets there. At its core, leftism presumes that certain people, by virtue of their gender, by virtue of their race, by virtue of their sexual orientation, whatever the case may be, you presume that they are somehow less able. Sometimes they're not living the same way of life that you're living because they just don't want to. Not because they can't or because anyone's oppressing them. They just have other things that are more important, or they come from a different culture. And I found great peace in realizing, Democrats are sitting around saying, what have we done wrong? And I'm like, you tried to force something. You tried to force something specific on people when all they wanted was for you to not hold them back. And what you were trying to force on them was actually holding them back. And they knew that, or, well, maybe a lot of them didn't know that. I have to get out more I don't know any black people. No, I know one black person that voted for Kamala Harris. And it's a very privileged person, by the way. I'm happy about that. But the others see what I see. That Democrats have never done anything for anybody, really. They've had their friends. And you're going to realize probably sooner rather than later, you're already realizing it if you're paying attention, that a lot of the people who are on the left that are pushing leftism, I think that the ones that are sincere or have been sincere about what they're doing, they are realizing they got scammed. Because leftism, liberalism, it is a scam. I got scammed by it. It's a scam. Because what they're doing will never help the people that they're trying to help. It only helps themselves. Okay? They realize it's a scam. And there are some people who are greatly benefiting off of this. I hear that there are some content creators out there that are saying that they're losing subscribers. those subscribers are becoming conservative. They're realizing that what's being pushed doesn't work. And for many people, it does sound absurd. Now, I think that there are people that still believe a lot of things about conservatives that are not true, but it's getting harder to believe that because you know people. And I mean, most people are not wacko enough to cut off their family. I would never cut off a family member because they're voting different. I voted for Barack Obama in 2008. My sister voted for John McCain. She lived in Arizona at the time. He was a senator there. She liked him. Okay. I think probably I was a little bit too young, I think, when he ran, but I supported Bob Dole because he was a senator from Kansas and I liked him. So I'm like, why am I going to be mad at her? And I did not like John McCain. And in 2012, we actually both voted for Mitt Romney. So there you go. I figure it's only a matter of time. And over time, I remember knowing people. I had my brother, he voted for George W. Bush. I couldn't stand him. There's no chance I was voting for him. But now I look at all of them and I'm like, yuck, all of you guys are gross. I don't like any of them now. I voted for John Kerry. I voted for Dukakis. Like, I voted for a lot of embarrassing people when I look back. But I had become conservative. I've always paid a lot of attention to my local politicians. And I voted for Dick Riordan for mayor of Los Angeles. I liked him. I think he did a good job. He was probably the last good mayor that we had here. I had James Hahn, who was also I believe he's a former mayor, as a judge, and he's one of the only few fair judges that I knew. He's the most fair and patient judge I've ever seen in my life. I have great respect for him. And I spent a year in his courtroom litigating a case and back and forth, probably at least 10, maybe more times in his courtroom. Eric Garcetti was horrible. Gil Garcetti, his father, as a district attorney, was much better. At least I thought so. He did make a lot of mistakes, but, considering what we've had since then, he was okay. Karen Bass is terrible. And Antonio Villaraigosa was terrible. These people, the city has seen great decline since all of those people. I mean, Karen Bass is not done yet, but she's not done anything to improve anything that I've seen. We have conservative enclave cities outside of Los Angeles. And it's almost like you go into a different country when you drive from Los Angeles into some of these cities. So, everyone is conservative, and it's just a matter of letting go of your desire to direct people that you feel like are disadvantaged. It's so insulting to be calling people a part of a disadvantaged group. Who are you to say? Who are you to say that someone is a disadvantaged group? If any one individual feels like they are disadvantaged and they're oppressed, okay, fine, then we can work through that. But who is somebody else to decide that someone is part of an oppressed group? And I tell people all the time, stop trying to outsource your compassion. If you know someone who's oppressed, why don't you personally roll up your sleeves and say, what can I do to help? Don't go vote for taxes on other people. Vote for taking away rights of other people. And when I say taking away rights, like, if you don't want a gun, don't get one. You're never going to be able to disarm criminals. So anybody who's out there supporting gun control because they don't want school shootings, nobody wants school shootings. But what gun control will prevent school shootings? And if you're talking about only shootings, like, what gun control will stop someone from planting an explosive? I think that we would be much better off dealing with some of the underlying issues. But, don't support defund the police because you've got a group of people who feel like they're disproportionately impacted by the form of policing. I've been saying this for a very long time. Stop being lazy about your values. Meet with your police department. These people all work for you. You pay their salaries. Meet with them and talk about what needs to be different in the recruitment of officers, in the training of officers. What would you like to see? Talk to people who can talk about what their risks are. Make those things, and then talk about crime. If you have a police officer, and I'm going to leave it at this because I know that this makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but it's real. It's real. And the sooner you get comfortable with it, the more impact you'll be able to have in actually improving people's lives and being a part of that. Is that sometimes when you have communities where the crime is high, and not, people like to make it out like not all Black neighborhoods have high crime. If your park doesn't have high crime, if you go into certain areas where like Buckhead don't have high crime, like not amongst the people in their community. But if you are in a community and someone gets killed, maybe when you pull somebody over, you're just hoping that you can get something that would help you find that person's killer. Now, I don't like that. I actually don't like that. But I also don't like a mother or a brother or a sister having a loved one that got killed and they can never find who did it. I think that police have gone too far in trying to coerce confessions out of people and things of that nature. But I think that we can fix that by simply punishing officers who do that. And I believe there was a Supreme Court ruling that said that a police officer is allowed to lie. Well, they shouldn't be allowed to lie. You should not be able to tell someone that they failed a lie detector test if they didn't. I've seen, I remember back when I thought that you could never get someone to confess to something that they didn't do. But I understand now that that's actually not true. And one of the biggest problems that we can have is that we assume that other people are like us, that we don't take into account their experiences that might lead them to a totally different experience. When I sat and watched people you watch that 5-hour, interrogation where they confess at the end. And if you've ever watched one of those, that the person didn't do it. I can't remember the name of this guy. He was supposedly killed his parents. He didn't. I don't believe that he did. But I watched them break him down, wear him down. Psychologically, this stuff is real. If you know psychology, you understand psychology, how you manipulate people, how you use certain environments for mind control. And you finally get to the person to the point where they're so broken, they'll say anything if they think they're going to get away and just be able to go home and be able to rest and close their eyes and sleep. And oftentimes they don't know, or they're afraid to just say, I don't want to talk anymore. I have nothing more to say. So everyone's conservative because conservative values, policies, and principles, that is how you create equality, social justice, and freedom at the same time. Anna's on her way out. The ones that are getting paid to push what they push may take longer, but eventually there will be no money left for them. So if you're wondering why, that's what just happened. And slowly but surely, people think that it's about conservatives taking over the information space. Now, for a long time, they were shut out of the information space. I used to find Rush Limbaugh unlistenable. I could not listen to him. I remember the first time I listened to Alex Jones, it was because I had heard about what a nut job he was. But one of the things about Alex Jones that I found out was that 90% of his show was covering other stories. It wasn't him. He would cover stories that were just being ignored by the mainstream media, and he would comment on it. Some of his commentary was outrageous, but I'm an intelligent person. I can tell the difference between commentary and a news story that he's referencing. I can look up the news story myself if I want to. I can further investigate it if I want to. So I could tell the difference immediately, and that let me know that the people who were reporting on him were either ignorant of what he actually did or they were lying. Most of them were lying. They were afraid of the information he was putting out, as they should have been. Because a lot of the information he was putting out turned out to be true, as we know. I've seen a couple of t-shirts that Alex Jones was right. Yeah, and the reason he was right is because the people who are doing this kind of stuff that they're doing, like mandates and stuff like that, they've been bragging about wanting to do it for decades. He was just ahead of the curve. So if you're a social justice warrior, if you're on the left because you're compassionate, I recommend that you watch my walk away video and that you understand that if you become conservative, if you've got a big giant corporation like Amazon, the way that you create competitors to Amazon is to deregulate and make it easy for people to get in that space. And that goes for every kind of business. There's a 25-year-old guy that lives or I don't think he lives here anymore, but he's a mechanic. He can't open his own business, his own shop, because the regulations are too overbearing. But remember back when and he's very good. He's worked on my car, by the way. Very good at what he does. He looks even younger than he actually is. The first time he worked on my car, he was only 22. I thought he was 14. He did a fantastic job, saved me some money. He wouldn't be able to open his own shop because of regulation. So that is the great equalizer. The great equalizer, and regulations are put in place on purpose so that only large companies who have deep pockets can exist in particular spaces, and they're trying to do it to food now. That's so dangerous. So leftists, current leftists, future conservatives, welcome aboard. The sooner the better, because you're going to be so happy. You're going to be so happy. You're not going to be scared anymore. Join us. You will be able to achieve everything that you ever dreamed of achieving. And you'll be able to see it up front, up close. You'll be able to touch it. You will be able to have an actual hand in it. It's so rewarding. If you like my content, please subscribe to my channel. Like this video, share this video, and I will see you on the next one.